everyone. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I would like to ask us, each and every one of you, that if you enjoyed these shows, please hit like, share, and subscribe after you view the show. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Crisis Victory Show. Today, my co-host Pete Turner and I have decided to come online, and we wanted to talk to the audience about how we not only survive extreme crisis events, but as we come through these events, how we're able to utilize it in a humanitarian sense. Now, this may not sound so important to many of you, but believe you and me, it is. And there are a lot of people out there that are deeply affected about how to deal with past crisis events. And once they have found a path to deal with these events, how they can channel that type of knowledge and that type of experience and go into a more humanitarian basis, which is also a form of recovery and healing. Now, as you know, many of you out there in my audience are people that have survived crisis events. That's what the show is all about. And that's what the people that tune into the show are seeking. So today with Pete Turner, my co-host and the host of the Break It Down show, by the way, you should all see his show. Hi, Pete. We really felt that this was very important to get this information out to you. So maybe it'll be a guideline for some of you that are struggling with PTSD, or struggling with memories that don't seem to fade away, because we tend to cling to things that are familiar to us. And unfortunately, in this case, many of us cling to the memories that were the most damaging to us. So without further ado, I'm going to have Pete start his side of the conversation today. We have Pete, who was active military. He worked in military intelligence. Basically, Pete was a spy working outside the wire. And over the years of our friendship and the knowing of Pete as well as I do, I know that to this day, he still deals and struggles with his PTSD. My side of the story is coming from a criminal background where I spent 15 years working in the Sinaloa cartel, smuggler, trafficker, many other things. The 17 years as I entered into working for the Department of Justice undercover, the things that I've witnessed, that I've survived, that I've gone through, captivity and torture, being kidnapped, betrayal by agents, an agent, on and on and on. But where we've defined ourselves for our future journey by taking that wisdom, that knowledge, and that survivorship to help all of you and to give each one of you an option or an opportunity, if you will, to seek another way of looking at how you're dealing with your extreme crisis events and how you can turn that into a healing process by healing others. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce all of you to Pete Turner, my dear friend, my co-host, host of the Break It Down show, just a hell of a guy. Pete, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for all the kind words, Al. I feel the same way about you, and I know we always have great conversations off mic. And I'm often thinking, gosh, we should do more of this, where we sit and break down some of these episodes that we've had, talk about what we've experienced, because in and out of our day-to-day life, we both each help other people, and often ourselves. And it's part of the ongoing collection of wisdom and curative behavior and words that we seem to gather because of the way that we're wired to engage with other people and to be of service to others.
Yes, I agree with that completely. I think, Pete, that we also have a lot of people out there in the audience that are struggling with the same type of conflicts, if you will, both on both sides of the law. What's so unique about today, ladies and gentlemen, is Pete can talk about military experience, his honorable life, where I can also talk about how I came out of a criminal history and a criminal life. So we think this would expand our audience interest, and we're really looking forward to having this discussion today. And Pete, I'd like you to kind of start off, if you wouldn't mind, because your background, your service and your honor and your dedication to your country has now flown into the audiences that you've done, what, a couple thousand shows? I mean, your numbers are way up there. And as you know,
1,000 shows.
Yeah. And I follow you on Facebook daily. I like to share your shows on my Facebook account with my audience because I think that you're very impactful. And we really need this discussion right now, though, with regard to other people that are going to be watching this, that are like both of us in a relative way, because they're dealing with, what do I do now after I have survived that period of crisis in my life? Advice, please.
Well, I mean, look, when you're an adult, crisis is all around us all the time. And so one of the things to realize is that, and not to be doomsayer, but there's always crisis. I often say I'm in middle age, so half of my life is on fire and half of it is serene and peaceful. And then they'll swap, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I've built up a muscle and some toughness in how I live. I've reduced the amount of mistakes that I make. I've reduced the amount of fuel I put into the fire, and that has been hugely helpful. How have I learned how to do that? Well, through my show, I've met a lot of really great people. I had a guy on about 2 weeks ago now. His name is Tyler Gray, former Delta Force operator. And
I remember the interview. Good one.
Well, yeah, he got blown all to hell and damn near lost his arm, but they built him a new one, which was not an easy process. Years of surgeries and pain and pills. And in this case, I'll put myself into the group with the Delta Force guys. When you have that kind of constant exposure to threat, to violence, all that kind of stuff. Now, the Delta Force operator in him would say, hey, I love it. That's what I'm built to do. And he's right? But our bodies still physically respond differently to stimulus, right? And so for me to stand in line to do all these things that are normal for other folks, it's a different kind of aggravation because my body just shoots cortisol into my system, for example, or adrenaline. And I have to readjust to the world in a way that I can't control the chemical part of who I was and what I did before. And it took me a long time to sort of understand that and to readjust how I experienced different day-to-day things, because that weight that would jump on my back, that doom that would loom over me, it drove me to be, well, frankly, candidly, suicidal ideation every day, right? Like every day I have a storm of suicidal ideation. I know I can withstand it today, but I take steps to make sure that it does stay corralled. And I learned that through my show, primarily. Some therapy for sure, some better choices in my life for sure, but that's the God's honest truth, is that there's a lot of days when I think to myself, I'd be better dead.
Well, let me ask you this, Pete. Let me cut in here. Do you find that talking to fellow veterans that have been through similar traumatic experiences is part of the recovery from the separation of the suicidal tendency, if you will, and the way that we go to bed every single night with so much of that on our mind? As you know, 2 years ago, my friend, former Green Beret Captain Robert, we'll just leave it at that, called me up on the phone, said goodbye, and took his life. Now, he was my anchor for 20 years. We were both recognized at a ceremony in 2003 at the Seattle VA, along with 5 other men who had also been captured and tortured while in the service of our country. And over the last 22 years, every one of them have passed away now, except me. They're all gone. Yeah. So I lost my anchor. I lost my root to where, when I was going through traumatic memory, that I no longer have that. What do you suggest? How would you advise someone like me in that regard?
For me, it doesn't have to be veterans. Because I was always sort of an outsider, even in the military, because that's what spies are, right? And I don't have that affinity like someone might assume that I do, right? It's not that I don't like veterans. It's not that I don't want to be near them, but that isn't my go-to group. And this is all taking a lot of time, because I'll talk to fellow veterans and when I need a lift up, they're not the folks that give it to me in a way that works for me. I've learned this about myself. I've tuned this, and so I've gotten better at that. When my brother took his life a few years ago, it was a path, and it turned out to be inexorable, but there was a path he was on. I was going through therapy, and my therapist said, hey, your brother is in serious trouble, and he is going to maybe not make it. And I need to protect you, Pete, from, because she knows I already have suicidal ideation, right? She's like, I need to protect you in case he does this. And she's like, you need to get comfortable with the fact that it's probably less than 50-50 that he lives. And she was right, and so, and that isn't because his end was destined, right? But he was deeply sick. And if you have stage 4 cancer, and so that's the kind of threat he was under, was this real medical threat, and he didn't make it. But when he passed, we had buttressed me from what was coming, what I could do, what I could not do. I could not save him. So we would have these conversations, and usually he would be drunk when he called me, because this was part of what he would do. And we would have talks, and I would just try to keep him calm. Right. And I'm pretty good at that kind of thing normally, but I don't bat 1,000, like there's sometimes when it would inflame and we wouldn't talk for a couple of weeks after that. And I would say, hey, how you doing? He would say, I'm doing terrible. And I was helpless to change that. He would be honest, because he could be with me. I'm doing terrible. My life is miserable. I want to die. And I'm like, man, and you think in your mind, like, I'm helping this guy. It's my brother. I'm helping him by talking to him. Maybe in that moment I get him to calm down a little bit, but his storm was so much bigger than anything I could ever change. I was really powerless. So I just quit asking that question. Obviously, he was terrible. He wasn't able to sleep. He had all these problems. He was compelled to kill himself, right? Yeah. And it was out of his control. And he hated that. He was super tough. All of this was out of my control as well. I could not do anything to save him in a substantial way. It had to be him. It had to be some combination of things. And I'm one of those combinations, but I am a small, insignificant cog. I don't even live by him, right? I'm hundreds of miles away. Now, I could be there in a half a day, right? I could be to him and maybe help him out. But what am I going to do when I get there? It's not my fight to have. As desperate as I am to help him, there's very, very little I can do. And
in the same instant, Pete, in the same instant as you're dealing about his trauma and what he's going through, it's elevating your personal.
Right. Well, that was the next words out of my mouth. Hal, you get it. That's why we get each other. Yeah. I still had to protect me, because I was taking a hit all the time. And going back to Tyler Gray, the guy I had on the show the other day, you can see the damage on his arm, right? Yeah. Like it was destroyed. And like, oh, can I shake your hand? What do I do here? How do I work this arm, right?
Yeah.
If you saw that psychological damage the same way you could see that arm, them and yourself, you would say, oh my gosh, I still need to take it easy. I had my ankle rebuilt last year. Yeah. And I had to take it easy. My body would force me to take it easy. And then as I got better, I had to remind myself, hey, I'm still taking it easy. I'm pushing forward, but I can't push past the point of what I could do, because my leg would just shut down. As it was healing, I would basically say, I'll run out of steps. And so my leg would fatigue, and it was like, I need a break. And so I'd have to stop. Because
Interesting comparative. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you think about your psychological health, there's a lot of that too. Like, this is what you can withstand today. And if you go past that, you get into a dangerous spot where you can re-injure yourself, and you're certainly not healing anymore. Now you're just being combative with yourself. And that's very hard for a guy like me and you to know that, hey, today's the day I heal by doing nothing, by slowing down, by whatever.
This is what leads us into this conversation today, right here and right now. Okay, we've hit that point. We have an acceptance of that which we're dealing with in a traumatic way. Now what we want to do is figure out another form of recovery. When Bob took his life and I lost my anchor in life, I had to find an alternative solution to that. The alternative solution for me, as you know, I've got 22 years working in trap houses, homeless counts, as a pastor. And my solution in that moment when I lost Robert's life, I started turning and focusing more on other alternatives that I could do as a solution to my own self-recovery, from my own thoughts about suicide, from my own thoughts about guilt. In your case, you served honorably. Your trauma came from honorable service. And my purpose, my part of this is I've always felt guilty because of my many years working in the Sinaloa cartel as a smuggler, right, among other things. And I couldn't shake the guilt. The guilt was very tremendous. And when I was approached by the Department of Justice while I was in Leavenworth Federal Prison to go to work for my country, and ultimately dedicated 17 years of my life undercover, this was the recovery. So what I want to say to the audience is sometimes recovery can come in a short-term period of time. And Pete and I, our cases, it's taken decades to recover from the traumas that we've had to contend with. And folks, this is something you're not going to be able to accomplish on your own. You've got to find some kind of a support that will be able to be compatible to the type of trauma that you have experienced. Because I tried to do the VA group conversations. Remember, Pete, we talked about group counseling. It didn't work for me. I mean, I really feel bad about somebody who just lost their pet dog and they're traumatized by it. But I think about people on the battlefield of the work that I did that lost their life in more severe ways. So yeah, I should have been talking to Green Berets or Navy SEALs or other people that are like you and I that have gone through extreme crisis moments. But that wasn't what worked for me. So I backed out of doing the group counseling thing and started seeking another brother, which, as you know, has been you in the last couple of years. We talk offline because we support one another through our traumas, and we have similar problems, if you will, that we both recognize in one another. Did I ever tell you that my friend Captain Robert, he was in the Hanoi Hilton. He was captured in Vietnam. He was in his 80s. He's a hell of a guy. Anyway, when one of the cartels found me back in 2020, they hit me out back of my home, left me for dead. Miraculously, I came back from death. And I remember the day I was taken out of the hospital and brought back here under protection by friends of mine that were very familiar with what I did for the Department of Justice. But did you know that Captain Roberts spent 3 days and nights sitting in a car out here in this parking lot with a gun in his lap, willing to take the life of anybody that would threaten his brother? That's how deep our support goes to one another. It wasn't that much longer, I think not even a year later, when Robert called me up, told me he loved me, and said his goodbyes and took his life. So we all deal with
He was probably beyond his capacity to withstand something like that, as noble as that is. We have to recognize our limits. And even if he was okay making that sacrifice, we tend to push ourselves beyond what we can withstand, and
yes, we do.
You're smart for saying, hey, there were 22 of us. We're all getting older, and a lot of us are dead now. All of them except for you in this case. And you have to understand, like, you have to change. You have to lighten the load. You're not the oldest person in the world, but you're 70, and you have to continue to fight this fight. And this is just me talking to you because I have friends who say the same thing, and you'll understand this. I get it. Group therapy didn't work in that case with that group, right? They have groups for special operators, and the VA is desperate to help you find a different group. And this is not me telling you what to do, but the reality is if you had to go to a second doctor to fix your arm because the other doctor and you weren't vibing, or they wasn't. When I was getting my ankle fixed, I had two doctors, right, at UC Irvine, both world-class doctors, world-class facility. And the first doctor was a mom. She's about to have a kid. She's like, hey, I'm going to have a kid. I'm going to be on maternity leave. So if we do this, it won't be until like next year. And it was the fall. And I'm like, oh, man, I'd like to get this thing done. I've been waiting forever. And she's like, well, I'll give you to this other doctor. He's a very good doctor. And I got there, and that doctor had no bedside manner, and I was not comfortable with it. So what did I do? I changed, and I said, I'll wait for the other person. And when she came in to rebrief, because she's a million people, she put her hand on my foot after she examined it, and she talked to me and just had her hand on my foot as a physical connection. And I'm like, see, this is why I waited for you. The other person was too godlike. Yes, I know what to do. Didn't want to listen to me because I would inform the doctor, and whether it had any impact or was performative, I'm like, no, I felt this thing happened. And she would take and manipulate the photo to look, and she's like, oh yeah, you know what? You did break your ankle right here as part of that. I'm glad you told me that. So, and then she made her whole list of things that she was going to do on my ankle, and I knew the lists. And so when we were going to surgery day, I'm like, hey, you're missing two of the things. She's like, I'm glad you caught that. Thank you. I would have seen it on the inside, but you're right. Let's get that fixed. And so she wrote the order out the rest of the way. That level of care for yourself, that level of advocacy for yourself. So I would encourage you, Hal, this is me actually giving you counsel, is to say, not that group therapy isn't your thing. That group for sure wasn't your thing. Find another one, find a Pete, find somebody else that works for you. I found alternative ways to do these things, but I don't allow, when I'm at my best, I don't allow my injury to expand. I protect it. I treat it like it's the most important thing about me, because I do have suicidal ideation. And I know that my peers who've done it have been at this gate and went through this gate. And I don't know how many more gates I can go through before I don't come back. And so someone like Robert had gone through too many gates, and he's like, this is no longer worth doing, right? And so maybe if we believe Pete's belief, maybe if Robert would have stopped at that gate and said, I've got to take care of me, Hal's going to be all right. Yeah.
Robert wasn't the only friend of mine who was a Vietnam War veteran that came back and committed suicide.
Right.
I lost another very dear friend of decades named John Joyner, who came down from Alaska. He had a charter fishing business up there. His marriage fell to pieces. His business fell to pieces. He came down and spent about a year with me, living with me. And then he took off to Colorado to go do an annual hunt with his brothers and cousins and all of that. And he came back, put a rifle under his neck and blew his brains out. And I never got closure from that because I didn't understand the why behind his instant suicidal choice. Now, this is a guy that did 3 tours in Vietnam, door gunner, shot down 5 times, rescued countless people. And, you just think that they're so strong and they're so secure in the person that they are. And then one day they put a rifle under their throat and pull a trigger. Where's the answer to that? There isn't one. I knew this guy for 25 years.
Right.
And still to this day.
My brother he was a little brother. He was tough as hell.
Yeah.
And they got to a point when we would roughhouse and I couldn't crack him. Right. And so he was as tough comes, but he had eroded. He'd had enough damage that he built his own homemade gun to shoot himself in the head with, And so I think the thing I'm trying to get across, and I'm not doing a good job of this, is that when we see, there's no judgment. Like if it's your time, it's your time. It's a good chance that I'll pass from suicide. Like that's a good chance that'll happen. It's not going to be today, but tomorrow, I don't know. And the further you get into the future, the less I know. If as you lose capacity to care for yourself, well, the word I don't want to hear you say is that group therapy doesn't work for me. All right, great. Well, then get a one-to-one counselor. Get into.
No, I like that you suggested another group. Now that you put that thought into my mind, then this is something I wanted to get.
And also do some peer counseling. Like you and I do. Like if you have a tough night, because I know that the demons are when you sleep. And it's the demons that wake me up. And so I know that world. And so I don't have to even talk about that. You and I can have a whole conversation, but in that conversation is all that love that is in there, because we know that like I go to sleep and I'm not afraid of sleep, but it could be that someday I'm like, I don't want to have that happen anymore. And then that'll be a new gate that I have to deal with is I no longer want to go to sleep. I can still go to sleep now, but if I start to lose that ability, you can't stay healthy long. Most people cannot stay healthy without any kind of sleep. Troubled sleep is bad sleep.
I went through a lot of that, Pete. And you know what? My doctor at the VA, I've been at the VA 52 or 53 years, I can't remember. But my doctor that I've got, she started regulating PTSD medication for me. And recently, we finally found the right cocktail that works for me to where I'm not waking up yelling that I'm in the jungle being rescued. Yeah. I'm through that now pretty much. And I'm really good. So what I'm saying to the audience is this: sometimes medication is also another substitute, another alternative that really needs to be seriously looked at and thought about. Because it doesn't mean that you're weak and you're showing weakness because you're tired of waking up in the jungle screaming in the middle of the night, freaking out everybody in the house. It's coming to a point of recognition that you need more than counsel. So when we have to biologically and chemically balance the body in order to fit with the stress and the trauma that we seem to have a problem getting rid of, it is definitely an alternative that each and every one of you out there that are dealing with strong events like Pete and I do every day of our lives, to seek that type of consult with your doctor and find out what may work with you best. Now, I've been on PTSD meds for 16, 17 years, and it wasn't until about 4 months ago where we finally got the right solution. And you know what, Pete? I'm sleeping through every single night. And I'm even having dreams, but I'm not having dreams that are bad. It's really kind of cool, you know.
What a relief, right? Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I was captured in 2002. So think about how long that's been dealing with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And think about this. I wrecked my leg, not in 2000, but a couple of years after that, and I dealt with that sore leg. I carried that dumb, stumpy leg around.
I remember the conversations about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so this is the same thing. Like, why didn't I do this earlier? Right. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of fear in that. And it's the same kind of thing. I wanted to go back to Tyler Gray real quick too, because I'm reading his book's incredible. It's called Forged in Chaos. Right. It comes out, I think in July. It comes out, and it's fantastic.
Oh,
And a lot of the words he wrote were words that I would have written.
wow.
And so when I think about what
Interesting.
it takes to do the things that he did to get better, I think about this. Like if I go into the VA and they want to put me in front of a new doc and they want to, talk about my PTSD, they're like, tell us about the incident. And I'm like, the incident? No.
Yeah.
There's,
So many.
so many, because we're atypical, right?
Yeah.
And they're programmed to deal with the typical person. So you have to say, this is what I always say, I don't want to be a jerk, but I'm not breaking open those wounds for you at an intake. I'm glad to go through these things, not doing it all right now because you're going to tear me apart. And the rest of the week, I have to deal with your need to fill out a form. And I ain't doing that. I'm not even going to fill the form out.
Yeah.
I'm not being obstinate. I'm just saying there's a hard line here that I'm not going to go by it because it's not an incident. It's
Been there,
decades.
done that.
Right, exactly.
Done that, brother. Yeah.
And so when you're in that group and they're like PTSD, and Tyler would say, no, I loved combat. That's what I was built for. It's the other stuff that I've got to deal with. And so you have to understand he didn't get there right away. He videoed himself talking, and he went through he was his own therapist for a long time trying to understand this. And he's very clear about how he got to where he got to. And he has a thing, he calls it LTSD. I don't want to get distracted by that, but he rejects the PTSD notion for him, right? And it's just like other people say, oh, it's post-traumatic growth. Try to turn it into a positive. No, I have a disorder, and I haven't been able to manage to get it into order yet. So the D stays there. Yeah. And that is,
and
how
it's not for deniability.
Right. And for people who've figured it out and gotten past it, great. I am not that person. And hopefully I'll have a day where, everything's sunshiny and great. I would love that, but it's taken a long time. So I guess I'm saying about Tyler and my own stuff, I had to find affinity. I had to find places that worked. I had to learn how to build walls and say, don't go past this. I'm still finding walls in my little garden where I'm like, ooh, I need to not go past this point. I love Hal, but I can't sit in a parking lot all night for 3 nights in a row and burn up, this capacity. Doesn't mean I don't love you, but it means that I have to limit what I can do to protect myself. I'll do a lot of things for a lot of people, but I have to be able to say, this is where I have to take care of me and you have to take care of you. And these cannot be the same thing. And that kind of strict garden wall building, it comes through a lot of self-reflection. It comes through a lot of dealing with fear. I don't want to have to tell people that I have suicidal ideation, but I have to, because other people have the same thing. They get into the same spot, and I want them to know that, right. And if you treat this like it's a serious thing, like it's the most important thing because your existence depends on it, well, then
because it is
treat it like that. Right. And you treat it like that and you get serious about it. And it's not me chastising you, but you go figure out whether it's group therapy or another kind of, equine therapy. Maybe how the thing you need to do is ride a horse. And you're like, I'm the happiest motherfucker in the world. I figured out that horses help me. I had a guy on my show, cows saved his life. And who knew bovine therapy was a thing? And now he's a rancher and he loves that his life has totally changed. They had him in People magazine. And it's an incredible thing. So there's something out there for everybody, and there's 1,000 ways to do it. They don't all work for everybody else. So just keep hunting. And that hunting is therapy in and of itself. I'm going to shut up and get out of the way now.
No, you did beautiful. And thank you so much. And as we get ready to wrap up this episode, I want to talk to the audience that's dealing with criminal prior traumas that they're sitting at, like I do. I've always carried a guilt. I've always felt bad about all my years in the drug cartels as a smuggler, things that I witnessed, horrific things that I witnessed being done to people over the 15 years of that lifestyle. And then the payback part of it, where I was approached and see, I wasn't arrested, Pete. I went down to Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico to negotiate my release. I'd already made my money. My life was set. I just had a newborn child. I loved my wife. I didn't want my family to come up into this type of environment. So I thought, because of my long-term relationship with the associates I had, that I would be able to go down, tell them I love them, thank you for all we did together, but it's my time to get out. And by the way, I'll go ahead and set up whoever you want to take over that which I built for you in the Pacific Northwest. Hugs and handshakes. climbed on a plane, flew home, and I had a third of a ton of cocaine and 2 soldiers sitting in my driveway, which was their clear message that there's only 2 ways out. One is prison, the other is death. So I turned the load around. The following day, I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office, and ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't a rat. I wasn't under arrest. I wasn't going to tell on all the good boys and girls to make a better deal for myself. I walked in on there to take on a cartel, and I knew that I would need a bigger baseball bat than the norm to take on something of that extremity. And what's bigger than the Department of Justice? Anyway, my point to you is this. Sometimes when we survive extreme crisis events, and we know we have to change and challenge the events that have put us on a path that in our soul we have a problem living with, you have to take an extreme direction, if you will, like I did, to take it on. Who would have thought I would have spent 17 years undercover as my payback? But in the end, 2018, when I finally laid down my path and my direction of doing that type of work, for a few weeks I had text messages coming in from various agents, phone calls coming in saying, Hal, you paid your debt, go enjoy your life, you certainly deserve it. And it was a form of restitution for all of that I carried within me, the guilt that I carried, the immeasurable I'm sorry that could only be altered and transformed by example. So in my closing message to you on my side of this, to all of you that have a criminal history, that are struggling and wanting to get out of the criminal lifestyle, find your reason, find your excuse, and then apply it. Saying I'm sorry is not enough. We have to, by example, become a product of that which we desire to take down, the element that destroyed our life in the first place. And you better believe, to you, me, to every one of you out there that are smugglers or traffickers or contract killers or whatever it is you may be off into, the price to redeem yourself from that comes at a very high solution. So as I close out my part of the segment and say goodbye to each and every one of you, I'd like to tell you all that God bless you, and I am praying for you. I believe that we all have what it takes within ourselves to remove ourselves from that which was bad, to generate that which is good as a result of what we have survived. Go out there and pass on a good deed to another person today. Let them pay it forward and let them pass on that deed to yet another person. And this is how we build a chain of not only salvation, but of self-preservation. So I want to thank you all for hearing this today, and thank you for letting me share my part with Pete. And Pete, I'm going to let you close it out.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today, and I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.